Hello everyone, and welcome to Basic Medical. My name is Corporal Godfrey. This is my colleague, SAC Parry. He will be my assistant for today. Basically, that just means that he will be the live practice victim I shoot in the face and get all of you to treat. However, I will also be letting him teach a couple of things to help give him some teaching experience. So please bear with us. All right. So the aim of this course is to ensure that you folks are trained to a reasonable standard of medical ability. The document says it will take about 2 hours, but we'll see what we can do about that, because no one wants to hear me talk for 2 hours straight. So there's going to be some basic and advanced instructions. Some of them will be accompanied by practical elements, so you're not just going to be sat there disassociating the entire time. I trust all of you have some sort of note-taking ability, be it a pen and paper or a Google Doc, because there will be questions to ensure that you understand what I'm telling you before I can sign you off as passed. Because if I don't believe that you have a good enough grasp of the system and it will cause problems for TMW or the infantry in the field, I won't pass you, so please pay attention. So the first part of this I will hand over to Perry, so listen to him.
Yep. So, as a combat medic, team medic rather, so section medic in what I normally call them, it's a very important role within a section. You are normally prioritized in some cases. You're responsible for the well-being of your section as a whole. You're the first to arrive on scene with medical knowledge, and you need to be competent in your ability to treat casualties. When you arrive at your casualty, you need to be thinking straight and paying attention. Be aware of your surroundings and have awareness at all times. Also, you're a rifleman, and you need to have more vigilance than a rifleman because you are a medic, because you've got to look after yourself and also your patient. When you hear man down or someone is calling for a medic, you are the first to run over there. No one else, you, because you are the medic. You have to assess whether the area is safe to treat the people. So if you're not in cover and you're in the middle of a fucking field, then I suggest you carry them assuming it's safe. If not, get some cover fire, secure the area with infantry. And then you'll put your weapon on your back. So you can't use the medical menu with your gun out. It won't show you any options. So I'll go into more detail about the treatment in a bit. But firstly, I will ask you for a refresher. So do you all remember the AET from phase 1? Yes, the AET is alert, eliminate, evacuate, and treat. You all familiar?
Yep.
Yep.
But I will give you a quick rundown, just make sure. So alert, make sure people around you, make sure everyone knows there's a man down by using the radio or shouting it. E is to eliminate. So you'll win the firefight first. You do not just grab the person and run. I should know that because I almost died the other week. I went medical mode. Yeah, make sure the target is either suppressed heavily or fucking dead. Hopefully the latter. The second E is evacuate, as you know. So get that person behind cover, get them to safe area where either your IC or 2IC recommend, or maybe a CCP, depending on how close you are. And the last one is T, meaning treat. So you will start to work on the patient, and I'll pass it back to Godfrey to teach you CABSEED.
So the most important part is CABSEED. You're kneeling by a casualty. What do you do? Well, next we have another acronym, CABCDE. First off, most importantly, C, catastrophic hemorrhage. This is any large wound or bleed which affects the head or chest and will cause the casualty to bleed out rapidly. If they also have wounds in their arms and legs, you put a tourniquet on them, and then we'll come back to those later, as you can't tourniquet the head and chest, so these are a top priority for you. So in reality, a human can bleed out in as little as a minute, but in Arma, I think it's about 3 minutes, but treat it as a minute for urgency's sake. So the colour for bleeds can range from a light cream colour to a dark red colouring. The wound will decrease in colour with each bandage applied until it reaches a shade of blue. This means that you have now closed the wound, but remember that it will open again unless stitched. which CTMs can't do. So keep an eye on it and make sure they don't die from reopened wounds. Also, refer to the right-hand side, and if it says bleeding, a wound is still open. Moving on to the second letter, A for Airways. This is the assessment of the casualty's airways. The aim of this is to ensure the casualty can breathe by making sure their airway is open, so the air can flow freely in and freely out of the lungs. In real life, a person can die from suffocation within 5 minutes, and I believe it's the same for Arma. So it is safe to assume that if the patient is conscious, they don't have airway management. For treatment, we assess the casualty's airway by selecting the head and going to the Airway Management tab, clicking Check Airway, and once this is done, you will see two things happen. The first is a pop-up on the upper right corner of your screen, and the second is a note in the patient's quick view menu. These two pop-ups give you the same information and will tell you what is going on with the patient's airway. If the airway is occluded, it means that the patient has something blocking their airway, most likely vomit or blood or something. To treat this as a CTM, you select Airway Management, click Head Turning, turn the patient's head to the side, and will allow the blockage to pour out of the patient's airway. However, this is not guaranteed to work and has about a 35% chance of success. If you see an obstruction, however, this means that the patient is unable to keep their airway open by themselves and requires assistance via hyperextending the head or Gadeo tubing. So this will have a chance to open the airway to allow the patient to breathe. If hyperextending the neck doesn't work and the airway is not occluded, you can use a Gadeo tube to save the airway. However, please note that if the patient vomits, the airways will become occluded again, then the Gadeo tube will be used up and you'll have to do the whole process again. When dealing with airways, we have a handy 7-step system. Number 1, check airway. Number 2, turn head. Number 3, check airway again. Is the occlusion clear? If so, move on. If not, repeat step 2. Number 4, hyperextend the head. 5, check airway. 6, Gadeo tube. 7, check airway. And then monitor the patient until handover or they wake up.
Pretty much you
Okay.
just check airways after each
Yeah.
step.
That's to confirm
Basically.
where you're at.
Yeah.
Airways are the most tricky part of medical because unlike wounds, you can't tell but at a glance that they're fucked. You have to do the extra step of checking airway. You can't look at them and go, oh, their head's orange. That means,
Yep.
it's the way we lose most people. We're going to get into pairs now for some practical so you can stop, being bored. So one of you will be doing the bleeding, one of you will be doing the airways, and I want to hear you saying what you're doing out loud whilst you do it.
And down.
I'm gonna do heads.
Yeah,
Checking pulse.
I'll start bandaging the head. He's been a little shot in the head.
No pulse.
Yep.
Yeah.
Checking airways.
Make sure you communicate, boys.
Large
Right.
emotion and velocity when I'll be bandaging the head. Can you start CPR?
Yep.
Right,
Doing
almost,
CPR.
almost done with bandaging.
Is it time to do CPR? Is his airways clear?
He has no pulse.
I'll get on his airways because I'll
Yep.
be done with his head in a
Yeah,
minute.
Airways are more important than pulse. Do the airways first, then move on to pulse.
Yeah, I'll check the airways. I'm done with his head, so I'll help
Yep.
you out.
Head's been bandaged.
Yeah. Airways are clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alright.
Yeah, weak heart rate.
Right, monitor.
Yeah,
Keep
I'll keep checking airways just in case. No heart rate again, CPR.
Yep.
I'll check the airways again in case. Oh, good.
Right.
I'll check the pulse for you. You keep
No
doing
pulse.
CPR, yeah?
No pulse.
Just be wary when you're doing CPR. You will provide a small pulse.
Weak heart rate.
Yeah, is that the small? Is that
Weak.
the?
Yep.
Yeah, that
Okay.
probably was weak because he was doing CPR at the time, I believe.
That's cool.
Like I said, just keep note of that because that will give you false readings.
Mm-hmm.
No heart rate, no
Okay,
heart
yeah.
rate again.
Alright.
This is pretty hardcore shit.
Oh, it gets way worse. Trust me. Right.
You
Right,
will,
Peter say.
you will
I'll just
go
be watching.
on my first whistle. Go.
Is the environment safe?
Yes.
Good.
Okay, I'm gonna check the airways.
Bandaging head.
Checking his airway. Airway management needed.
So he's obstructed, not occluded.
He's
Head patched. No pulse. No pulse. Yeah.
Right. Human, how do we clear an obstruction? There we go. Hyperextend head.
yep. Gonna check the airway again.
Still obstructed.
So we're gonna
So now you put in a Gadale tube.
put the
Still
tube
no
in.
heart rate. Yeah.
Checking the airway again. His airways are clear and
Cool.
medical.
Airways clear. All bandages have been applied. Nice
Yep.
work.
Still
Nice
no
work,
heart rate.
boys. Okay,
Good
that's enough.
job.
He's alive.
Yay.
Cool. Nice work, guys. So let's all go sit down and have some more talking.
Yay.
Right. Nice work, guys. So past that little bit. Now let's move on into our cab seed to the third letter, breathing. Now, breathing is separate, is different from airways. The casualty's breathing needs to be assessed. The aim of this is to locate any injuries within the chest itself, as this will cause a fatality over the next 15 to 45 minutes. The only breathing injury we currently have in Arma is a pneumothorax. Simply put, this is a wound in the torso that has punctured the lung, causing it to collapse, and the way to identify this is if a patient's SpO2 continues to drop, even after airway management. So while team medics do not carry SpO2 meters, like the pulse oximeter, a good warning sign to look out for conscious patient suddenly collapses, and he has no open wounds and his airways are fine. By default, pneumothoraxes are a rare occurrence, so just in case you do come across a breathing injury, the way that they can be treated is with a chest seal. So to apply that, you simply click the torso, go to bandaging and fractures, and then click apply chest seal, and this will fix the pneumothorax. Okay, now onto circulation. So in the first C, catastrophic hemorrhaging, we stopped all the major bleeds. However, there may be numerous wounds still that we tourniqueted earlier, and while they're not life-threatening right now, they will cause problems further down the line if left untreated. So this is also a great opportunity to get a list of their vital signs. Any stitched injuries can easily be identified by having a little S next to their injury name. So now is when you treat the tourniquet limbs that we did earlier and we told you to come back to later. So you treat those until they turn blue on the medical menu. Once the limb's treated, you can then remove the tourniquet on that limb, as if it's left on there too long, it will cause extreme pain to the patient. However, use your own judgment here, because that if it's not stitched, so the wound could open up again, and if it doesn't have a tourniquet on it, it will start to bleed. So if they're going to be seen instantly, take it off. If it's going to be a while, keep it on, because you don't want them to bleed out, because that would suck. Finally, this is when you take a pulse and a blood pressure. So disability next. This is where you would go over to any broken bones, mark them down, report them to your IC or a member of TMW, as now they are considered tier 2 and they need to be MERTed. Alongside this, you monitor the casualty and make sure that the vital signs are stable and they're not dropping in any way. With the change in ACE, a casualty now has to have stable vital signs, which means a blood pressure above 85 systolic and a pulse of 60 plus to have a possibility of being conscious again. And finally, E for evacuation. Now that we've treated the casualty, it's time to evacuate them for further care. So we reassess their category. Are they still tier 1? Are they now tier 2? Are they tier 3? And we mark it on the ACE medical menu using the card at the bottom. Next, prepare your report for TMW and ready to hand over the patient. Vital signs. The vital signs we can currently monitor on a patient consist of pulse and blood pressure. So while you may not have anything to do as a team medic with this, it is vital information for me as the CMT when you hand over to me, because low pulses, low blood pressures are signs of severe blood loss, whereas high pulses and high blood pressures may indicate a drug overdose or something. So the blood pressure comes in two numbers, the first being the systolic number, which is the pressure at which blood is pumped around the body by the heart, and the second being the systolic number, which is the resistance to the blood flow in the blood vessels. In simple terms, if you imagine that the heart is a bottle in your hand held under water. To squeeze the water out, you apply pressure with your hand, that's the systolic pressure. If you release the pressure, it all floods back in, and the pressure that the water used is now filling up the bottle. That's the systolic pressure. Be aware, if you attempt to get a pulse or a blood pressure from a patient who has a tourniquet on that limb, you will not get an accurate reading. So make sure you either remove the tourniquet or use an untourniqueted limb to get an accurate reading. As CTMs, you will not get clear, accurate numbers like we will. So I will now go over what you will get. So for heart rates, when it says low, that means their heart rate is 45 or below. So when it says low, that's 45 or below. When it says heart rate normal, that means it's between 46 and 120. When the heart rate is high, that's 120 plus. For blood pressure, the systolic number, the only one we care about, if it says blood pressure low, then it's between 20 and 100. If it says blood pressure normal, it's between 100 and 160. And if it says blood pressure high, it's above 160. So let's move on to painkillers. So painkillers are an absolute godsend, and they are an effective non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug, or NSAID. They are mildly effective in reducing pain in a casualty. However, care must be taken as they do affect the blood pressure of said casualty, and they should not be used if the casualty has a high blood pressure, and as such they may only be carried and used by a trained medic within your section. But it's so much safer than using morphine, and also you guys can't use morphine.
Yep.
So everybody wins basically. They're just a great way for CTMs to do pain management. So you guys pretty much already did this without me having to teach you it, but cardiac arrest protocol, procedure, whatever. So when you arrive at a tier 1 casualty, the first thing you must do is follow your CABC drills. Bandage the wounds, do the airways, check the pulse. If you don't have a pulse, open the medical menu, click on the chest, click on advanced treatments, start CPR. So you continue CPR until there is a heart rate or the casualty dies, though I would personally prefer the first option than to the second one. And also remember to check the pulse after every single CPR, the same as with Airways. And if you check it whilst you are doing CPR, it will say you have a pulse, but they actually don't. Because what I often see is I tell someone to do CPR and they just keep doing it repeatedly, and then I check their blood pressure, their pulse, and I'm like, mate, fucking stop! Their pulse is like 200 now.
Yeah, okay, so that basically answers my question. I was about to ask, is it dangerous to continue doing CPR when there's a heart rate?
Yes. Yeah. So if I arrive and I say to you, do CPR, you're basically really helping me because you're putting a pause on this guy's bleed out timer while not his bleed out, his heart rate. So like he now can't die from having no pulse because he's being CPR'd. So I can focus on doing airways and bleeding, and then I can be like, all right, cool, thank you, that's defib. So it just
One last
Yep.
silly question: anyone allowed to do CPR?
anyone
Yeah.
is allowed and also is expected to.
Encouraged.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you are assisting a member of TMW, if they've asked you to do something, you do not stop that thing until the TMW member tells you to stop or the casualty dies. I don't care if your IC comes over and says, "Oi mate, come on, we're moving out." I've asked you to do this, so now I'm in charge because it's medical. Speaking of assisting TMW, at any time a TMW asset may request the presence of a CTM to assist them with a casualty, or a basic rifleman, anyone really. If this happens and it is safe to do so, make your way to the medic. They will then instruct you on what they want you to do. It may be anything from monitoring vitals to bandaging, managing airways. You must remember to ensure that you listen to the medic and repeat instructions that they give you. For example, if I say, Riley, monitor the airways, I expect you to say, Roger, monitoring the airways. This now allows me to have reassurance that you've heard what I've said, you've understood it, and that you can carry it out efficiently and professionally. Whereas if I say do this and I don't hear anything back, I'm going to think, is he doing it or is he not doing it? And then I'm going to have to worry about that. So
Yes, boss.
yeah,
Boss.
we've got a casualty in front of us, and I want to say, Parry, monitor his airways.
Monitoring airways.
Cool, and that's just as simple as that.
Yeah.
Roger.
Just say it back to me so I know that you've understood. So Barry, do you want to go over assisting TMW in a mass case situation?
Got it. So prior to the TMW arriving, TMW priority should be assessing the situation and forming a casualty report. So I'm already abbreviating to identify the number of casualties and what conditions they are. So they're in. This information can be passed to TMW upon their arrival. You should be able to tell them. So this is the number of casualties you have. Make sure you have an accurate number. Don't guess. So secondly, what tier are those casualties? So tier 1, 2, 3. So the third is what treatment you have given. So that might be, their airways are clear, they have got Goodell tubes, and I've turned their head. Something like that, whatever it may be. Same again, it's to let us know what's been done so we know we don't have to do it.
So I would like to say the most important thing is please make sure that maybe not you yourselves, but just this is just going to be a blanket rant for a minute. Make sure that you know the accurate amount of casualties and what tiers they are, because then Parry has to say that. So if Parry's the platoon medic, someone says to him, "We've got 4 times T2s." He says to me, "I have 4 T2s in need of MERT." I then call up fucking 18 or 27 and say, "I have 4 T2s in need of MERT," and then they get on the ground and they're like, "Right, where are the casualties?" And I go, "I don't know."
Yeah, it's more because we have to know to be able to call in the correct response.
Yeah, I understand that information can be confusing, and also we've got that thing where people act like they're tier 2 when they're actually tier 3, which is quite annoying.
Yep.
So if you see somebody limping, check if they've actually got a fractured limb. If they don't, they just need a stitch, and they're still tier 3. They're only tier 2 if they have a broken limb. Well, we're at the end now, gents. So there was much rejoicing.
Yay.
So all that's left to do now is to make sure you've refreshed your kits and you all have the correct stuff, and then we can do the test exercise. So if you all look in your bags, do you have packing bandages, elastic bandages, quick clots, painkillers, tourniquets, and Goodell tubes?
Yes.
Yes, boss.
How many of each
Yeah.
do you have?
20,
So-
20, 20.
Yep.
5.
Yep.
And 10.
Yep. And
Same.
also 10 Goodell tubes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So we can move on to the text exercise. So This is the practical exam. The aim of this exam is to confirm that you've listened to everything I've been saying, and you now can confirm your ability to perform in a scenario that you will find yourself in during an op night. Throughout the assessment, you will be judged on your ability to perform medical treatment, prioritize your casualties, and work as part of a team. Now then, a mistake in protocol that does not cause harm to the patient will result in a minor failure, and this may be overlooked upon further discussion. However, a mistake in protocol that does cause harm to the casualty will result in a major failure. So like a major failure would be you've bandaged them up, but you haven't checked their airways. So they've now gone tier 4 because their airways aren't clear because you forgot to check. Or like a minor would be just something like, like saying they're the wrong tier, or, generally admin stuff. So this may be very stressful and confusing, but remember the simple steps that you've been taught and you'll be fine. I may throw in some extra stuff depending on how I feel to make it more realistic, but please remember, keep your cool, do not snap at people, because that's not professional.
It's not helpful.
Yeah. So
Okay.
I understand there's a lot of sensory overload going on. Like I've got fucking 2 radios and the platoon sergeant going, "What's going on? What's happening?"
Yeah.
So once the test has begun, you will receive no assistance at all outside of me just repeating what the scenario brief is. Cool?
Yep.
Cool, boss.
Yeah, basically, don't panic. Just breathe and go through cab seed. So do make sure they're not bleeding out first. Tourniquet their limbs.
Then
Do
Airways.
the airways.
Yeah.
Just
Chest and head.
just
are
go down
priority.
the list calmly, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, but we're gonna be doing this in pairs or solo.
So
Yes.
the scenario:
I'll go through.
you are to form into buddy teams, and I will take turns injuring each of you in various ways. So you will be solo, but you'll be in pairs, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
Including task.
And then myself and Perry will supervise the other, whilst the rest of you sit back and wait your turn. You're tier 1. You're just laid there. You can listen to how badly they're doing. But the person doing the medicing stuff, I need you to remember to say out loud everything that you're doing, so I can process that you've learned it, if you know what I mean. I want to hear you say each step of your cab seed as you progress down the list. So until the completion of the scenario, each pair will be graded based on their overall performances and any errors made during the course of the scenario. So, Human, if you run to that tree over there.
Not doing IDs, are we?
No, just shooting.
Thank God, because
The
that's too
ID's
bad.
advanced mid.
Yeah, I know, but
And Kerry, get in that
I would be
building.
disappointed.
Okay.
Cool. So
What do I do?
I'm going to shoot Kerry, and then you will run in and treat him as if the area is safe.
Well, new
All
guys
right,
are safe.
cool. So how do we
Easy.
think we did,
Nice.
guys?
Good.
Yeah?
All right, so questions. So, Kerry.
Go on.
All right, so can you tell me the first C in Capseed?
Catastrophic bleeding. I mean hemorrhage, sorry.
Yeah. Well, yeah, same thing, yeah.
Yeah, same thing, yeah.
Why is that number 1 most important?
Because the casualty can bleed out within like few minutes, so we need to focus on the first head and chest usually.
Riley.
Yep.
When you are assisting a member of TMW, and I've said, Riley, come over and help me, and your IC comes over, what do you say?
I'm with the TMW, so
Yep.
as long as I'm not finished with you, I am not leaving.
Yes, thank you. I say he's busy at the moment. I'll give him back to you when I'm done, because medical takes priority.
Yep.
And Human.
How do you fix a Pneumoforex?
Well, just
Since all of you were listening today, give me one thing you found out in this course that you found interesting.
1 second.
How a whole structure works, because compared to the previous unit, I was head of CMTs there as well, and it's more structured, more organized.
Yeah,
than
I was about to say the same.
because we both were a part of the same unit.
Right.
and
Yeah.
this is way more
Organized,
organized.
yeah.
I'll take that as Riley's answer. Carrie, I will ask for a different answer, if that's all right.
Different answer.
Or something interesting that you found out that you didn't possibly didn't know, or something that you liked.
I mean the blood pressures I didn't know, and the heart rates you can like if if they're low you can predict how much they pretty much like average.
Yeah, yeah.
So I didn't know that, so that's interesting, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, something that you'll pick up once you've
Yep.
touched a few dead people and a few people that aren't quite dead yet. You'll very quickly learn and figure out what's good, what's bad. I'll take that as an acceptable
Sorry
answer.
about that.
Exceptional answer, sorry. Human.
The breathing. Well, not that there's much to it, but I don't know. I found the whole pneumothorax thing pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And the SPO too. I still want to know what the SPO stand for. I wanted to ask that earlier, but I
That's
forgot.
advanced med stuff.
Yeah, so you'll learn about
it's
it in
your
advanced
it's your
med.
oxygen meter basically.
Yeah, it's how much
Okay.
oxygen is in the blood if there is a pulse. Probably not the most official answer, but yeah, essentially it's just how much oxygen is flowing in the body. But you'll
Okay.
learn that when you do advanced,
Yeah, you will.
which you probably will.
So, do we all think we passed?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. I looked after Human, so I'll give you your feedback. So you did pass. The only thing I would say is speed up a bit because you were very slow. Which I mean, yeah, you're new to this, so I understand that. But you definitely need to speed up a bit.
But that comes
Okay.
with practice, so
Yeah.
don't worry about it.
Yeah, the airways are a little scary. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not always sure what's happening when the
Oh, no,
airways
yeah.
and then the
I
don't worry about
understand that it can be very daunting at first, but
Oh, it's still daunting
because
now.
there are only two options. It's basically occlusion. You use the head turn, or for you it will be AccuVac because you'll have the special stuff.
Yeah,
And
that's,
if it's obstructed, you do the Gadale tube. So it's either AccuVac or Gadale tube.
Right, just so I don't get confused, Riley, you were the second second
The
victim,
second
right?
one, yes. So Kerry was first.
Yeah. So the only thing I really had issue with was the fact that you left the chest open whilst doing everything else. You tourniqueted the limbs, went to Airways, packed the head, cleared the Airways, and then went to pack the chest.
Yeah.
So that would be a major because they could have bled out in that time. Luckily, it was only minor bleeding, so you're still allowed 2 majors anyway. But yeah, so just make sure chest and head are packed, and then do everything else, because you can stop the bleeding, and then everything else can take a bit of time. So just something to remember. Like I said, you're still very new to medical stuff, at least in this unit, so you'll get used to it, honestly. But yeah, you're still passing. Just
Yeah,
something
I
to
was
realize.
doing it more. I was thinking of a more realistic approach
Yeah.
than Arma's. So
Yeah, that's
it's
fine.
like it is different.
As long as you know what you did wrong and you know you're going to improve on. Like I said, you've got plenty of time to practice it, and it's you're fairly knowledgeable anyway. So just make sure pack chest and head priority. You can leave the limbs bleeding for as long as you want, as long as they're tourniqueted. So yeah, that's all I've got to say really. Just make sure you do it. But other than that, you did great. Terry, same again. Sorry, not same again. Yeah, you did great. No issues that I had. I think maybe you heard what happened. I don't know. But yeah, you did great. I've got no issues with. Oh, today you all did great. But yeah, no issues, Kerry.
Yeah, thank you.
So you've all passed. I'll be putting in the medals tonight, so that will be processed whenever. Human, I'll be putting up an advanced med at some point. You're all free. You're all free to disconnect now.
Yeah.
No,
before I
I'm.
dis-
You mean for
Oh,
the badge?
Yeah, you have no more work now. You're all done. You're
Yeah.
done for basic med stuff.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
just go
Or-
about your happy days.